Welcome back, guys. In this session, we will delve into the comprehensive functionality of message boxes in VBA. While input boxes facilitate communication from us to Excel, message box, on the other hand, serve as Excel's method of communicating with the users. We have previously covered the basics of message box with examples like message box hello. Yet, the scope of message box extends far beyond simple string returns. Message boxes in VBA serve a wide variety of purposes, such as providing information, issuing warnings, confirming actions, or prompting user inputs in a clear and direct manner during macro execution. They offer multi-level interaction capabilities, existing as standalone variables within VBA. To streamline your learning experience, I've curated a message box cheat sheet that encompasses everything necessary to swiftly integrate message boxes into your projects. I will be sharing this resource. Let's proceed without delay and explore the world of VBA Message Box. So, the general syntax of a VBA Message Box is that you have a message box and then you have the prompt. The prompt is just what you're prompting the user, right? The question that you're asking. The buttons, okay? The buttons here is where I will be sharing with you the cheat sheet. Okay, the buttons is the tricky part. The title is just title. The title of the message box. Help file context. I don't use that. I don't use it that much. All right. So we're going to focus on the prompt, buttons, and title. But for the buttons, in particularly, I'll be sharing with you a cheat sheet which I'll be attaching onto the workbook that I will be uploading into the description. Okay. So also another thing, to write a new line in VBA, we always use the command VB new line or VB CRLF, right? So for example, message box, it's a risky decision, and then you have a new line, and in the new line, the following line, you have this word, are you sure? Okay, so remember that you have, if you want to break your message, right, your string into two lines, you have to use the VB new line and VB CRLF. Okay, so this is the cheat sheet that I was referring to earlier, right? So basically, in your button, right, in your button section on the syntax, right, these are the possible combinations. You have the combination of buttons plus icon constant and other buttons if needed, right? So the buttons can be combo button constant. So you have these possible combinations of combo button constants. You have the VB OK cancel, abort retry ignore, VB yes no cancel, VB retry cancel, etc. Okay, these are combo button constants. And then you have the single button constant, which are basically standalone constants, right? That when combined together, they can form the combination as illustrated above. So for the single button constant, you have the VB OK, VB cancel, VB abort, retry ignore, yes and no, right? So these are the list of available single button constants. So the way we're going to play around with the buttons is that this section right here, buttons, can be any of these, right? But you can only choose one, right? You can either choose VB OK cancel and that's all. Or you can choose VB cancel and that's about it. Or you can choose VB yes, no cancel, right? So, but you only have to choose one button from either the combo button constant table or the single button constant table, right? So remember, one button. Likewise, you have icon constant, right? So the list of possible icon, right? Basically, you have VB critical, question, exclamation, information. So these are the icons that you see on your message box, right? So you only have one icon that can be used at any given time for your message box. And then you have the third combination of other buttons. In the other buttons, you have the VB default button. Basically, which button is going to be your default button. So the button that is the default button will be highlighted in a slightly darker shade of gray. Okay? So when it's combined together, you have this formula. Buttons, which means it can be any of these buttons here. Any plus icon, any of these icons here. So if you don't want the icon, you could just forget about the icon and just move on to plus other buttons. So if you don't want other buttons either, you could just use the buttons alone, right? Any of these buttons. And if you want to use icon constant, any of this icon, And if you want to use any of the other buttons, then use the VB default button 1 or 2 or 3. So these, when combined together, can produce wonderful results. Okay, so let's go through some example that we'll be working together. So now on this first section, we have this message box, right? So we're going to try to replicate this message box. Okay, so remember when I told you that Visual Basic application offers multi-level interaction capabilities? What I meant by that is that whenever you have a combination button, in this case, I've chosen the VB Yes No as the first button right here. Okay, I've chosen VB Yes No. So now VB Yes No is actually a constituent of VB Yes and VB No. So depending on what the user has selected, either yes or no in the message box, right, in the message alert, you could actually return results. For example, if the message box is VB Yes, you could actually have some results. If the message box is VB No, you could return some other results. Okay, so that is what I meant when I said that message box offers multi-level interaction capabilities. Okay, all right. And remember when I told you that it exists as a standalone variables within VBA? Yes, the variable name is VB Message Box Result. So if you are going into something more severe than just a simple hello, right? You might want to trigger the message box result. You might want to activate it. All right. So you can store your message box as VB Message Box Result and write your message box prompt, title, then your buttons is just this formula right here, right? So I'm going to share this, right? I'm going to put it into a workbook, this table, and then I'll be sharing it with you, okay? So don't worry about that. Let's try the first practice problem, okay? Let's try the first practice problem, and you'll see how we can work around, okay? So I've attached them already, okay? So I'm just going to have the slides next to the workbook so I can see better. Okay, so that I can see better. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, right. So I'm going to get into the Visual Basic application editor, and I'm going to insert a module. Okay, I'm going to insert the module, and then I'm going to try to resize them back. Okay, I'm going to try to resize them back so that we can see them next to each other. Okay, right. It's a little bit too small, but yeah. Never mind. Okay, so in the first instant, we have this. Are you sure? Yes or no, right? So I'm just going to name a procedure. Okay, I'm going to name a procedure. And what can be this procedure be? It can be anything, but I'm just going to name sub procedure message. Okay, and what I'm going to say is dim message box. Remember the variable V. Sorry, okay, we are getting the intelligence, so I'm just gonna enter. Okay, then I'm gonna say this message box is simply gonna be VBA dot message box. Okay, dot message box. Right, apologize. Okay, maybe in a message box, and the prompt is simply going to be are you sure, right? That's what I'm saying, the first one here, right? The prompt is just going to be are you sure? Okay, and then the title is going to be simply as a display, right? As a display, right? That's the title there. Display. And then the buttons, right? Now this is where you can see that the buttons have to be addressed as buttons, right? So what buttons are we using? What's the combination that we're looking for? What's the combination that we're looking for? We are looking for the VB yes, no, right? We're looking for the VB yes, no, and we have the exclamation, right? We have the, no, it's not exclamation, it's information. Okay, I'm sorry, this is the information icon, right? And we don't have the default button, right? We don't have that, so don't worry about that. So VB yes no, right? VB yes no plus the icon is VB information, and that's about it. Okay, so we've completed the message box. Now we want to add these multi-level interaction. So we're going to say that if message box equals to VB yes, then sheet 1, right? Because we're on sheet 1, I believe that the name is sheet 1. Oh, sheet 9, sorry, the name is sheet 9. Okay, so sheet 9 dot range A1, right? So I hope range A1 is not hindered by the attachment right here. Okay, so A9, yeah, A9 is not hindered, right? So A9 dot value equals to 5, right? Else, if sheet 9 dot range, no, sorry, else if message box equals to VB no, right? Then sheet 9 dot range A9 dot value equals to 10, right? And I forgot the T right there. Okay, and then I'm just going to end the if. Okay, so that's all we have for the first case. And let's try to run this macro. Okay, let's go back and let's try to run this macro. So I'm going to run this macro. Are you sure? Yes or no? See, I'm saying the exact same things. I click yes, I'm going to see the value 10 populated onto A9. And if I run and say no, I'm going to see the value 10, right? 5 and 10. So that's what I basically meant, right? The multi-level interaction. Okay, so you have a combo button constant for each of the combo button constant. That the combo button constants are basically made up of single button constants, right? So for each single button constant, depending on what the user had selected, you could actually return an appropriate value that you find fitting. Okay, so that's what you have to understand. And the secret formula for the message for the buttons is right here. Okay, it's right here. Buttons plus icon constant plus other buttons, right? Okay, so let's try the second example. On the second example, I have something like this. Okay, I have something like this, whereby I'm having as a display, that's the title. The prompt is, are you sure? Okay, and this is the critical icon, right? Icon, whatever it is. Okay, so the critical icon, and then we have the combo button constant of yes, no, and cancel. All right, we have yes, no, and cancel. So I'm just going to name sub rock message version 2. Okay, what I'm going to do is the same exact thing that I did earlier, right? Message box as VB message box result. Okay, so I have the IntelliSense, and then the message box is simply going to be VBA dot. Why am I getting IntelliSense returning a value that I did not hit enter? I have no idea. Maybe it's a glitch, but never mind. Okay, so what's the prompt? The prompt is simply, are you sure? Right? Right? The prompt is simply, are you sure? And then the title is going to be as a display. And then the buttons will be yes, no, cancel, right? We have the VB, yes, no, and cancel, right? This is one of the constant that I spoke of earlier, right? In the combo button constant, one of the combo button constant. First, if I go and just, right, we can see that we have this VB, yes, no, cancel, right? So it's one of the combo button constant. Remember, you can only choose one button at any given time. It can be either a combo button or a single button, but only one button from these two tables. Okay, so VB is VB, yes, no, cancel. And then, okay, I don't have to worry about the default button. Okay, so I'm just going to close this. So I'm not going to add a multi-level interaction here because I don't need to say, well, if message box equals to VB yes, then something, VB no, then something, VB cancel, something, right? We can do that because we know that the yes, no, cancel is actually just made up of yes, no, and cancel. Okay, so that's why we can have 3 levels of interaction. In the VB yes, no, we can have 2 levels of interaction, yes and no, right? So think about it as that way, right? So I've ended the sub, and now I'm going to run the procedure, right? So if I run the procedure, are you sure? Okay, I'm not seeing the all right, okay, because we have forgotten the VB critical, right? This X right there is critical, okay? I'm pretty sure, okay? So I'm gonna add that, and then I'm gonna run the macro again. Message version 2. Are you sure? See, we're seeing the exact same thing. So if I click yes or no, it doesn't matter because we don't have a multi-level interaction. So I've already shown you an example how to do it in the first example. So if you want to do it for the second example, please be my guest. All right. So finally, we'll be going through the third example. Right. The third example is as a display. Are you sure? Okay, the same thing. But we have a VB exclamation, and as you could see, we have the retry grayed out. Right. So we have a default button at the second button. Okay, we have a second button as the default button, right? So we have remember the combination, the formula, right? Where we have the button constants, and then we have the button constants. Right? And icon constants and other buttons. So the other button is the default button, right? So we're going to use that same formula over here. Okay, so we're going to use the same formula, right? So sub message version 3. Okay, so this is the last example. Dim message box as VB message box result. Okay, and then I'm going to say message box equals to VBA dot it's happening again, right? Never mind. Okay, right? So prompt. What's the prompt? Are you sure? It's the same prompt, okay? It's the same prompt, the same title, okay? And it's also the same title. So the title is going to be as a display, right? Display. And now, what about the buttons? Buttons is based on the magic formula that I've shown you. The first is what's the combo button constant? Is it abort, retry, ignore, right? So you have the IntelliSense. The second one is the icon. What icon are we talking about? This is an exclamation icon, right? VB exclamation. Okay, so I have IntelliSense, so I'm just going to use and leverage that. And finally, which default button is our button that we're going to set as the default? That will be the second button, right? It's the second button. Okay, so I've done that. And the procedure, close the macro and close the editor and run this proc message tree, right? We're seeing the exact same thing: abort, retry, ignore, and you can see this is they have this blue highlight, whatever. Okay, that indicates that this is the default button. So if I click either one of them, it's not going to return anything, right? Because we don't have a multi-level interaction with abort, retry, or ignore. Okay, so you can add them if you want. Okay, so guys, that's about it for message box. I hope you have learned something, and I will see you in the next lecture where we will be going into parsing Excel formula with literal strings. Okay, very interesting stuff. Thank you and take care.